Hello, my name is Drew Sukup. On behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's Zadara webcast, Hybrid Cloud Storage, Control Your Data, Control Your Costs. Presented by Doug Jury, VP Partner Marketing at Zadara, and Ray Soto, Senior Solution Architect at Zadara. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You will receive an email with the on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered in the question window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen. Third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. All live attendees who opt in at registration to share their information with the sponsor will be entered into a raffle to win a $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will be contacted directly by Zadara, so good luck. All right, let's get started. Doug, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you so much, Drew, and thank you everybody for joining today. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I've got to catch them all because we have such a vast crowd here today. Scaling across the U.S. and I think a few other countries also involved. So thanks an awful lot for joining, and thank you, Ray, for helping me out here as my technical alliance here as well. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through this short agenda. First, I'm going to introduce Zadara a little bit. Now, just a little bit about me. I've been in the storage industry for a little over 40 years, so I've been around doing this for a while. I'm one of the co-founders here at Zadara. And I've been here for a little over 9 years. So I've been giving this story and this type of training for the last 9 years. I love to tell a story. Being in sales for a while, of course, and technical marketing, I love to tell a story. So I'm going to wrap a story around this for you today. We're going to talk about adding Zadara to your VPC. And then we're going to talk a little bit about this thing called the virtual private storage array. And it really is a very novel approach to storage. I had never seen it. I had never seen anything like this until we started this company. And it's very, very unique. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go into 4 use cases that really you folks are focused on for the hybrid cloud solutions. Manage your data, manage your costs. We're going to talk a little bit about how this affects the value of what you get out of these programs and so forth. And then we've got a couple of simple case studies and so forth. Now, a little bit of housekeeping on my side is that you may type in some questions if you wish. We've got people that are watching for those. We'll also answer the questions. I may just choose to answer the questions at the end of the session, pending on how that all goes. We've also have a couple of polling questions that we're going to bring up for you. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. And thanks again for joining. So the real question here is, why Zadara? Who is Zadara? What is this thing called enterprise storage in the cloud, the agility of the cloud? And as you know, a lot of products are born within the cloud and the cloud dynamics today. So I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, I also want to kind of visit some of our end customers. And I've got a story on all of these, as you would imagine. Verizon needed to have dedicated spindles and dedicated storage for their instant message environments. And so I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail. You've probably already seen the Rakuten logo up there in the upper right. We're basically helping with their all their online needs and so forth using our object storage. And Ancestry is probably one of my favorite all-time use cases. I worked with this one from pretty much start to finish. They ingest data from Lehigh, Utah, and they scan in, pictures of your grandmother and pictures of military records and things like that. And then they ingest it and they move it over to the Amazon cloud on the East Coast. And that's where they create the derivatives and the things that you see as an Amazon.com customer. So very, very interesting how they've used some of this technology in a very, very cool way. Now, as you would imagine, we've been here for 9 years, and because we're a cloud storage company, you can see that we've created many clouds out there today. Today we go across 6 different continents, and basically 300 clouds today are spun up. Now, why this is important, we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, but this is basically the the ecosystem, if you will, that we can either use as targets, or we can use those as production, or we can use those as a lot of things. So when you start to think about questions, and you start to think about, how can I sort of put Zadara into play for me, basically we can look at this map and we can help you out in many, many places. Now, off to the left, I just to kind of compare, contrast, I put in kind of some of the Amazon regions that are out there, and some of the AWS regions in Seoul and Singapore and Tokyo and so forth, all the way down to the US and Virginia, Ohio. So not only do we support the Amazon regions, which is kind of very interesting for a lot of you folks running in that region, but also we can expand this much further than that. So why are we here today? I mean, that's always a good question, right? What the heck are we going to talk about? So Ray, I'm going to turn this over to you, and you can talk a little bit about the virtual private cloud.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Doug. We're trying to show here that, VMware VMC in AWS is great. It does what it's supposed to do, but it brings some challenge because it creates a silo, data silo. And to share that data amongst, like another VPC in AWS or another cloud, it's possible. It's just, costly. Your private VPC, there's no avenue to do that, to share that. Or, also if you do in an on-premise solution, to share your data with your VMC, it's also doable, but it's also costly too. So what we bring into this factor is, if you can move to the next slide there, Doug. If you add Zadara, I mean, you take your data out of the VMC and put it onto Zadara, because we reside outside the data center of AWS, but we can actually make the connection into your VMC cloud, but also connect into another cloud, back to AWS for an EC2 instance to share the data that's being utilized by your VMC, your private VPCs, and also your on-prem solutions. We make that a little easier, a little more cost effective, and it makes it a more shareable solution for your hybrid clouds. I hope that all made sense, and you can go on the next slide, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dissect, and we're going to go into this notion of a virtual private storage array. Because now that we know a couple of things here. We know that you have a need for enterprise storage. You have a need to connect your VMware up to enterprise storage and enterprise cloud like Zadara. So now let's spend a little bit of time, and I want to kind of put on our instructor hat a little bit and make this kind of a classroom environment. It really isn't much of a sales conversation and more of an education. So let's talk VPSA. This would be fun. So just the 20,000 foot view of VPSA is it's a multi-use storage, single footprint. We like to say it's a multi-architecture, but a single tenant experience. Okay, so it's multi-architecture, single tenant experience. When we created this environment back in 2011, we had to basically present this into a public cloud like AWS, like Azure, but we wanted to make sure that we kept people sort of segmented apart from each other. So we had to figure out a way to sort of organize this based on some properties that we wanted to understand. So if you read the top byline there, it says basically we can it can easily be configured, reconfigured on the fly. We can basically change this to any data type, any protocol, any location. So if you look off to the left, we support the hard drives, of course, nearline SAS, and the bottom we support the solid state drives. But what about that middle gap here called hybrid? That's when you really want to maybe save some money and put in hard drives. Today we're shipping 14 terabyte nearline SAS drives, but I might want to put some SSD cache in the midst of all that, being able to increase my writes, might increase my reads, having cache hits, and all those other technology things as well. So solid state drive, it comes with deduplication. We're going to talk about that in a little bit more. And then the hard drives is going to be used for more fundamental, maybe file structures or things like that. So we really have a soup to nuts from files all the way through. Now, if I look off to the right, once I take those drives, and I'm going to show you exactly how we're going to align this into a usable chunk for you folks, okay? So off to the right, we're going to basically take those drives and everything else I'm going to talk about here in a moment, and we're going to stand it up as block. We're going to stand it up as file, which is NFS and CIFS, and we're going to stand it up as object using S3 and Swift compatible. So remember, I said multi-tenant architecture, but single tenant experience. Each of those block, file, and object storage is a single tenant experience. I'm going to whet your appetite a little bit here to basically keep you with me as we move forward through here. So that black icon in the middle shows that multi-tenant architecture that is inside that block. We're doing file, we're doing block, we're doing object, we're doing all the things we want. Now, the next piece of this also is that we can do this in a hypercloud and connect into your VMware instances, perhaps in Amazon. We can do this in your colo. We can do this in your own data centers, and then we can bring that ecosystem to bear. So this is really our three fundamental pillars of our company: enterprise grade, performance, and security. When we sat down at the table in 2011, we said, we all know, I mean, we had done companies before, and when we came together, we said, we really want to build a new type of enterprise grade storage. We want to be able to do this not only with solid state drives and nearline, that had been done. We also wanted to do in-flight and at-rest encryption. That had been done. Snapshots, mirrors, all those kind of things, that had all been done. So that really is the definition of enterprise-grade storage. But if I move to the right, this is where the genesis is so important. We wanted to make this agile and infinite. We wanted to only charge our customers for the usage, by the drink, we call it. So if you're going to spin up 15 or 20 terabytes, you pay for that. If I ship to you 150 terabytes, but you only use 40 or 50 terabytes to start with, I only charge you for the 40 or 50 terabytes, and that other 100 terabytes is just sitting there in the wings, ready to go. So you basically are going to be charged for what you use. We can put this both on-prem and in the cloud, as I talked about. And one of the interesting things is I can scale up and I can scale down. Now, a lot of products out there today can only scale up. It's kind of like a ratchet when you're working on your car. The ratchet only goes one way. You can't kind of crank it backwards. And that really is a part of the problem with a lot of as-a-service type of products and storage. Well, here, I can go up and I can go down. Ancestry loves that feature because they may have a lot of ingestion going on and they might need 100 or 150 terabytes to get the work done. But then maybe over the holidays, you got people, taking a rest, taking some breaks. Maybe you don't have as much ingestion coming off the microfilm, so therefore they can kind of crank it back and reduce their pricing a little bit. We also wanted to do this with the expectations that we're not going to have to go out and we're not going to have to visit our customers face to face. So we wanted to design this product so it could literally be managed from a few network operating centers in Irvine, California, and be able to do everything we need to do right there from our NOC in Irvine. So I remember, I'm a field engineer many years ago working for Digital Equipment Corporation, and I had to actually travel to a lot of sites to install this. It might take me 2 or 3 days to install a storage device. But today, basically, it gets installed. We can install these units in under 4 hours if we require. Okay, so we got enterprise grade storage. You only pay for what you use, and we're going to manage this for you 24/7, 365, proactive support. Now, what does that mean? Proactive support. We're going to be looking for things that might occur down the road. We're going to say, hey, this particular volume looks like it's getting full, and by 3 in the morning, it's going to run out of space. So we're going to basically throw more storage at it, more drives at it, because we always keep enough of a cache or enough of a pool of storage to be able to expand things, whether it be on-prem or in the public cloud. I basically will always have enough resources to do that. Now, let's say that you want to, it's 3 years old and you've got the older drives, and we want to put you on the newer spindles that we're currently doing. We're going to do this seamless migration for you. We call that storage Immortality. We're going to do upgrades. And then you're going to have these senior technical resources standing by all the time. So you don't have to worry that, oh, I need to remember my account number and I got to get a smart person on. You just put in a support@zadara.com ticket, and automatically a really smart engineer or ops person can basically give you a call back. So we really do embrace the as-a-service market here, and the as a service. That's really how we stay successful, is by making you folks successful. So fully featured, fully elastic, and fully managed is really our 3 taglines. Now, down at the bottom, there's a lot of stuff going on. Really, there's data analytics, and you got DevOps things going on, field sales ops. You got a lot of things going on. And if I was to basically extend this slide up to the three ways of bringing our product to bear on-prem, maybe through a service provider in the cloud or hyperscale, there'd be lots of things, lots of arrows and twisties and turnies and things like that. But what we want to do is we want to organize this with layers. So the first layer at the bottom, virtual private storage array and virtual private object storage, is what we do. That's the design of the product. That's what we've been doing for 9 years. Now, if I go to the next layer, part of this is what we do. We do our own backup and our own DR, and we do antivirus working with companies like McAfee, and I'll show you our highly available infrastructure here in just a moment. But we also partner with people like VMware. We partner with people for the containers, like through Docker engines and things like that. So we want this product to basically get from the bottom and display it or put it into the top through a very analytic, very engineered approach to be able to get the bottom to the top and be able to configure this. And again, any data type, any protocol, and any location really does help us to be able to do this. This was really our big idea back 9 years ago to be able to do this. Now, enterprise storage. Some of enterprise storage is on here, and it certainly should be. If I was another storage company other than Zadara, I'd probably want to see this slide. But I wanted to just be clear with everybody that block file and object storage at the upper left, I can offer all flash or deduplication. Now, there are some companies out there that believe that the whole world is all flash and needs to be deduped and it's all SSD. But I think really a lot of our customers, let's say it's more like 50-50, still choose for a lower cost product, nearline SAS drives, perhaps object storage, things like that, to be able to do that. So, but we offer our all flash and our dedupe is every bit as good as everybody else's. Thin provision volumes, of course, is something that you IT people out there understand extremely well. And then being able to get large volume sizes, that's really been kind of a problem in the public clouds to date using other products. And I'll use Amazon as an example, like EBS. Sometimes the volume sizes are only in the 16, 20 terabyte range. We can get into the hundreds of terabytes. So sometimes that's an elegant way of looking at things. NFS, CIFS, Fiber Channel, iSCSI, all those things as well. Now, multi-zone, if I drop to the lower left, multi-zone is simply, if I'm looking at an on-premises solution, so you want me to ship it to your campus, well, I can take half of my technology, and I'm going to talk about that in a sec. I can take half of my technology and put it in building 1, and I can put the other half of the technology and put it in building 2, and I can create a cohesive virtual private storage array, but that scales across multiple buildings. So now not only can I absorb maybe individual failures, but I can also absorb site failures, and that's really a key, and I'll show you that in just a sec. Non-disruptive upgrades, I talked about that. We can basically go from the various firmware grades. You may not even know, unless you've asked us to schedule an upgrade with you, which some customers do, you may not even know that the upgrades have taken place. Remote mirroring, cluster support, and then I talked about the 256 AES and in-flight. So I'm going to create a VPSA with some slides. I'm not going to go live, but I would love to talk to you folks about how we can get Ray or myself to kind of go live on this and show you exactly how we're going to do it. So the first thing you do is you pick your location. Choose where you want Zadara to be, whether it's in a public cloud or on-prem. It's very, very simple. Everything's done through URLs. Configure your storage. You choose the data type, capacity, media, all those types of things. And then you basically add any advanced features. So let's go ahead and kind of put some of this into motion. This is an example of really doing some work in an AWS environment. Let's say we're gonna pick on Virginia on the East Coast today. So step 1A is select your site. So we're going to give the VPSA, the virtual private storage array, a name, a description. We're going to click on one of our hyperclouds, and then we're going to click on the region. Now, if I pull that select region down, you'd see those 15 sites that I showed you on my map. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create this VPSA by going through. Now, if it's an on-premises environment, we basically would have a choice. So maybe your company name would be here, XYZ Corporation. And then you're going to be able to select your own site. So let's say you're a company like Omnitrax, and Omnitrax has about 7 different sites out there. So they would now be able to, through this one common interface, they would be able to create this these different VPSAs in different sites. So one common interface to be able to create your storage experience, if you will. Now that I've gotten to this page, now I'm going to go ahead and select pieces of my hardware. And I'm going to select the size of the engine, which is going to be based on cores. And I'm going to also select, in this case, 4 of the 7.6 terabyte SSD. So I'm going to select my engine. I'm going to adjust my cache up or down, depending on what I think I need. And I'm going to select my, my dedicated drives. I'm going to hit the next one. And now I have the ability to turn on Docker containers and pieces like that inside. I can turn on antivirus. I can turn on some backup to object storage and pieces like that. And then as soon as I hit the create button, something happens. And what happens is this wonderful slide right here. And this slide talks about multi-tenant architecture, single tenant experience. So let me take you through this slide a little bit. So I just created the top, the solid state drive VPSA number 1. Now let's climb into my technology a little bit. Up on the top, you can see that I have 6 little boxes. Those are my storage nodes, and the storage nodes represent simple x86 servers, okay? So they're just standard x86 servers. They've got drives, they've got cores, they've got memory, they've got cache, they've got all kinds of cool stuff inside there. So by answering the questions in my provisioning portal, which I just showed you, I now have the ability to basically pull off the rack pieces of resources that are inside those storage nodes. So in this particular case, for VPSA number 1, I basically picked off cores that make an active and a standby RAID controller, or engine, if you will. Okay, so now I'm kind of getting back to the traditional phraseology for you folks out there that basically has led us to this point of having to do this kind of work. So I've created RAID controllers, or engines I call them, and each one has their own dedicated set of cores that run this. I've also, you saw me click on 4 drives, and these 4 drives represent physical drives that are your drives alone. Nobody else can use those drives. In the public cloud, one of the biggest concerns is noisy neighbors. That means other people could be on the same drives. They're very secure, but other people are on your drives, and they're basically maybe putting a real performance application on your drives, and you may suffer from the performance. So these are your 4 physical drives. And with that, you have your own cache, you saw that. You have your own memory to run this engine. You have your own deduplication schedules, your own credentials and login. This is exactly what you want it to be in a single tenant experience. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, stop right here for a moment, and I'm going to go to a polling question. And the polling question that I'm going to do is, let me bring it up here for us. Okay. Where do you run virtual private clouds, VPC? Where do you run your virtual private clouds today? Check all that apply. So if you could go ahead and go through this quickly for me. And we'll give it just a few more minutes. All right, let's see. It looks like it's slowing down. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. I think we're good there. And I'm going to go ahead and share the results. So interesting. A lot of people don't run their VMware instances or their devices in the cloud at all, 28%. 21% say they do run it in the cloud at AWS, or perhaps another 21% for other clouds. Private cloud is 17%, and on-prem. So if you look at this, it looks kind of like we are now addressing all of these different environments as we go forward. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take that one down, and now we're basically back to our conversation here about a single tenant experience and multi-tenant architecture. That's perfect. So now a second VPSA comes in, and basically through another set of e-commerce pages or whatever, and now they want to select a VPSA number 2, basically, and this is based on a 400 engine and perhaps 10 drives. So now our software goes off and it creates the VPSA engine for 4 cores, 2 for active and 2 for standby. We've selected 10 drives, and those 10 drives are now yours and yours alone, and now we can create a VPSA number 2. And now the last one, now that one, the top one might be for a SQL database, the middle one might be for NFS or CIFS, And then the bottom one, customer comes right in and says, I'd like object storage. Now, this doesn't have to be 3 different customers in a public environment. This could be in your on-prem, just like you just talked about. 34% of the people out there are running in their on-prem data centers. Just think about this. This could be marketing, it could be sales, it could be engineering, it could be maybe your archival, it could be a lot of different things running all these different data types. So, Ray, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you're going to take us through the next 4 use cases for us. And Ray, you might want to unmute, perhaps.
Yes, I do want to unmute. I've been talking for quite some time already.
There you go. Perfect.
There.
Well, you know, we've been doing this locked away in our houses for so long that you just kind of sense when somebody's still muted. So go ahead, take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate it. On this slide, I just want to illustrate kind of like what we talked about earlier. Moving the data from your AWS VMC outside that environment, that silo, so it makes it easier to share with other clouds or your private on-prem type of solution. This is just an illustration that it puts your file or block outside of AWS. We have a direct connect, utilizing AWS direct connect features, which we cover the cost for, and make the connection that way. So you do get to utilize all the enterprise level type of expectations from a storage device that you would see. As illustrated here, it's kind of reiterating what Doug was talking about, that we support the snapshots, all flash, file block, you name it, and have all of the partnership, with Microsoft also too. If we can move to the next slide. On this one, it's showing the data extending the data center, basically your data center. If you have your on-prem solution there, your primary could be at AWS. We have the ability to, having the data shared outside of AWS makes it a lot easier when you start doing like migrations with AWS itself. vMotion, let's say, in vMotion, you have to also move your data over. If you didn't have that outside, that's would be very costly for you. But having your data outside of the AWS environment per se, it makes it a lot easier, less information to move over, cost effective, and your data is always residing on the same storage device. As shown there, illustration for use cases, analytics, machine learning application, test and dev. This is a great environment for them, where your development can be on premise and access the same storage device. If we can move to the next one. This is more, business continuity, as it talks about. We have utilizing our mirror technology behind the scenes there, where your on-premise solution can be talking to the primary one, or even utilizing the Zadara behind that, straight across as illustrated there. Either way, you're backed up in some way. We all know the technology can go down. Even AWS do have some hiccups. And during those hiccups, having a mirror technology behind the scenes there, you can actually spin up your VMs to communicate and keep the data going with the exact same information that you can get to if you're connected through your AWS connection. See, next slide, please. Cloning. This is a great feature where, again, once you can take advantage of the single storage environment there and actually clone it and mount it, any volume, any block, it could be a block, could be an FS. You can clone it and instantly mount it in your, for your development, for your testing environments that could be anywhere. Another cloud solution, other VM, stuff like that. It makes it very helpful, especially like I said, in development, you're trying to test. There's a lot of testing that requires live data, but obviously you don't want to manipulate the data, so you actually clone it, and actually it makes it so much easier to do some development there, and it's really quick. It's based on the copy on write type of stuff, so it takes a snapshot and then clones it and you mount it. And I think that's about it. So hopefully this spins up. I hope that little section spins up some questions. Okay.
So let me go ahead and launch a poll if we can first. Which virtualized storage use case interests you the most? And we talked about expanding VMware Cloud on AWS, data center extensions, business continuity, or clone production volumes. What do you think out there, folks? And I'll go ahead and let this go a little bit. Kind of interesting on this side, I can see the horse race going on. See what's happening. And it looks like it's sort of settled out. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I'm going to share the results. And the results here, let's see, well, it's almost right across the board here. Expanding VMware Cloud, so expanding your views in AWS, of course, maybe offering this enterprise storage, data center extensions, perhaps, being able to go to those data centers. It makes sense because we had some folks that were still running in the data center. Business continuity almost always gets a high mark. Everybody's really talking about that. Right now, I'm in the process of designing a module that talks about RPO and RTO and how you really use the recovery point objectives and recovery time objectives to your benefit. And maybe we can watch for that. And then cloned production volumes and how we're going to do some of that. So I certainly do appreciate the content there. Now let's go ahead. I wanted to review a little bit of VPSA. We talked about the VPSA. We talked about the storage nodes being isolated, the ability to create a use case for each individual departments or each individual customers or things like that. We talked about how it's pay as you go. We talked about you're only going to pay for what you consume. We can put it in your data center, or we can put it in the public cloud, or maybe in a colocation facility. So in an hour, it's awful hard to get through some of this. But one of the real interesting concepts is this notion of not spending money on things you're not using. It seems kind of fundamental, doesn't it? I remember back when we were all flying, I was up in Salt Lake City, and I was out to a customer site, and I said, Bob, why am I here? And he goes, well, he said, we're going through a technology refresh. And I said, okay, perfect. I said, how much storage do you own? And he said, 500 terabytes. I said, all right. So let's say that this mark right here on the gray area where it says wasted spend, let's make, for Bob's example, let's say that that's 500 terabytes. And then I said, well, how much are you using? And he said, well, I'm using around 200 to 250 terabytes. And I said, okay, so you're using about half of what you bought. And I said, so where's the problem? Why am I here? And he said, well, we got to do a technology refresh because the cost of maintenance is going up and I really have to refresh this. And I said, okay, so let me get this straight. You paid good money for 500 terabytes. You're only using 200 to 250 terabytes. And now before you've even used that other 250 terabytes, you're being asked to refresh it and get rid of it. And he looks at me and he says, yeah, that doesn't sound very smart, does it? And I said, no, it doesn't sound not smart. It just sounds like this is the way the world works today, is you buy enough to grow into, and then maybe you don't grow into it enough. So let's look at this a little bit. For year one, up on the top, we have the events of the initial need. So we know that you need your actual usage, and we're going to give you a little bit more so you have the ability to grow up and down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to maybe it's going to shrink, it's going to collapse or whatever, you're going to drop back. And so your actual OpEx number is going to go down with your usage. And then maybe at year 3, you acquire a new company. Now year 4 is kind of interesting. Why did the OpEx number get lower than the actual usage? And the reason for that is technology refresh. And I have that on the next slide in just a moment. But you can see that basically being able to traverse or organize this based on usage is much better than having to pay for unused storage that you may or may not ever use. And so this is really the kind of the aha moment of a storage as a service. Now, there's a lot of companies that do storage as a service, but it's not a single product that builds the block, the file, the object. It doesn't build all that in. It doesn't have the different hard drives and solid state drives built in, and it doesn't have the 24/7 maintenance built in with all the other pieces. So really, this is kind of the secret weapon here. Now, we refresh on your timeline. We call this storage immortality. And storage immortality just says we're going to keep your storage fresh and new all the time. So if you look at 2013, maybe I put some hard drives out there and it cost you X. And then in 2014, I go through a new evolution of higher density drives and lower cost. So your price comes down. Same exact amount of storage. And now 2015, 2016, you can see how the hard drives are falling. So your cost over years is going to basically be radically reduced. Now, if you look at the blue, when we started shipping the SSD drives, those basically started to come down as well. And now we're on the 7.6 terabyte drives, and we've added deduplication, and we've added compression, we've added all those other pieces. So if you were a customer of ours since 2013, you would have seen the cost. If you didn't grow, now everybody grows, but if you didn't grow, you would have seen your costs go down over the last 6 or 7 years. And that's what I've seen. I've been here since the start of this, and I've seen these customers are now doing twice as much storage at the same price. Now, how do we do this? How do we do a technology refresh? Is it simple? We go off and we looked at empty spaces in your environment. Let's say you're an on-prem customer. We're going to ship you new SSD drives. We're going to migrate the old or the data from the old SSDs over to the new ones. You don't even know this is happening. You don't have to know a whole lot. And once the data gets over to the new SSDs, we basically kindly ask for you to pull out the old SSDs and ship them back to us. So basically, we're going to keep your environment fresh and new. This isn't just for spindles. This is also for the infrastructure. We have a way of doing it. We'll send out new storage nodes, and you can basically reappropriate those as well. Now, let's talk about a different use case here for just quickly. The other use case is I ship you 100 terabytes. Let's say that you're on the line here, you're a service provider. And if you're a managed service provider and you go, Doug, I'm really building my DR and my backup as a service business. I need all really cost-effective drives, maybe nearline SAS drives. I'm going to use your caching layer. So would you ship me 100 of these drives? So I go, perfect. So I ship them 100 drives, and they start to do their work. And then 4 months later, they call me back and they'll say, you know, our sales guys are doing a great job of selling our infrastructure as a service for databases and file shares and things, higher performance. So I need more SSD drives. But I had you ship 100 terabyte of SATA drives. I haven't used only about 50 of them. So I've got 50 SATA drives. Can I swap those for SSDs? And I say, of course. How many do you want? Well, maybe 30. Okay, great. We'll ship you 30 SSD drives. You basically, we're going to turn on the lights. You'll know which SATA drives you need to pull out or nearline SAS, and then you can put in the 30 SSD drives. Remember, you don't own it. You can't get it wrong. We'll ship this on a monthly basis if you really want, if your business changes. Now, 8 months later, you say, you know, our backup as a service is taken off again, but I need you to ship me some more storage nodes. So we ship storage nodes, we ship more drives. We don't charge you a nickel for that until you start to consume. Once you start to consume, then you start to pay more for this. So storage immortality and the ability to refresh things takes one path, and then basically changing it and addressing a different use case takes another path. And I hope I was clear on making sense on that, because there are a lot of companies that will change out the infrastructure, but they won't necessarily change out the drives. You own the drives, and that's really not part of the contract. Now, we talked about security and so forth. If you're going to the public clouds or even in your own data center, we want to make sure that we have some special conversation about this. Secure encryption, but you control the keys. A lot of times when you go to a public environment, the cloud provider does the encryption, which means that they control the keys. But we're going to basically have you input a key, and we're going to basically say, do you know that if you lose this key, you could potentially lose data? Yes. Do you really know this? Yes. Did you ask your mother if you could do this? Yes. Okay, and then we basically encrypt the data. But we really want to be clear that we don't have the encryption keys. We can't unhash this. We can't take this back if you basically have encrypted the data, which should make you feel extremely secure and really private in that particular environment. The control and transparency of customers crave. On our user interfaces, we have everything you need. We can do analytics. We can do automated alerts. We can do elastic provisioning. We can do the chargeback usages. We can do all these things on the interface, so you really become a guru of your storage environment. But remember, you don't have to do a whole lot. We're going to augment your IT department so you can go off and do the things that you haven't been able to get to perhaps with everything that's going on today. So we're going to basically take a big chunk of this storage burden off your shoulders, and that really is what it's all about. It really is. It's like when I rent an Avis car, I don't expect to do an oil change. I don't expect to do an engine change or change the tires or whatever. I'm expecting them to do that. I still have to drive the car, just like you still have to create volumes and create the usable elements here. You can create the VPSAs, but I'm going to take care of all the back end support here. And then we talked about our 24/7 management, live proactive management, adding drives on the fly, even if you don't know you need more drives. 100% uptime guarantee. We have an SLA of 100%. Now, our true uptime numbers is around 5 nines plus, which is 99.9995. And the reason I can do that is if you remember my the storage nodes. If I lose a storage node, I've got a surviving engine and I'm protected by RAID technology, so I'm good. If I lose a network device, I got front end and back end, I'm good. If I lose a site and I'm using multi-zone, I'm good. So I basically have no single points of failure built into this architecture, which again makes sense because if I'm basically running these 300 clouds across the world, I can't basically be unprepared for single points of failure. A storage node may fail, or a disk may fail, or a networking may fail. And you know, in the course of 9 years, one of those devices, they've all failed, but our VPSAs don't go down. We continue to do this. So our uptime guarantee is very, very important. We alert things on operating thresholds when your storage is reaching the high level, when your CPU is reaching the high level, and things like that. Periodic non-disruptive upgrade and software upgrades at no cost. We talked about that. And expert DevOps team builds solutions to complex storage challenges. We've got some of the best DevOps guys I think I've ever met. And you don't have to go through a answer number 3. I just went through this with my credit union. I had to answer number 3. If you're a mortgage company, answer number 2, answer number 1. All our people are busy. You're not going to get that. You're going to basically send a ticket to support@zadara.com, and we're going to get right back to you with a human, and we're going to be able to do that for you. So when you're starting to select a storage as a service partner, let's spend a little bit of time dissecting this a little bit. First of all, do you offer cloud, on-prem, and hybrid storage? You know, a little bit of both. And because you don't know, I mean, people that answered that survey, you could have said, well, geez, do I only get one choice here because I got some in the cloud and I got some on-prem? Well, I got more on-prem, so I'll answer it that way. But I would say most people have a foot in the door in a hyper cloud or an Amazon environment, but they also have a lot of files that are on-prem, and a lot of things are being repatriated right now back from the cloud because of some hidden fees and egress and ingress and all those other things that we don't really want to talk about today. You also have to ask that partner, how do you handle noisy neighbors? Now, I had an example of a customer that said, you know what I do, Doug, is in the public cloud, I create 10 usable storage elements, if you will, and I'll pick on Amazon for a moment and call it EBS. But so they create 10 EBS volumes, and then they run some performance tests against it, and they delete all but one of them that outperforms the other 9. And that's how they basically, they sort of figure out the noisy neighbor syndrome. But that doesn't mean that somebody can't move in on your drives over the weekend and cause your performance to be reduced because of that. Do you support all the data types? Now, there was a slide I showed in here that talked about all the operations going on at the bottom and then a simple view to the top. But if you bought your storage based on, well, I'm going to buy this one because it's a good NAS head, I'm going to buy this because it's great at block storage and SSD, and I bought this because it's good at object storage. You've got 3 things to manage. You've got 3 different sets of tools, technologies, and techniques, 3 different ways of doing this. So really, you want your storage as a service provider to basically put a kind of a wrapper around all the different data types and protocols, any location at a cost per drink, of course. Pricing structure. With Zadara, you spend less time managing your enterprise storage and you pay for only what you use. That poor gentleman, Bob, up in Salt Lake City, basically spending $300,000, of which $150,000 never got used. And I hope that's not you folks out there today. I hope you folks are consuming, pretty much what you've purchased, but you always want to keep a little bit of gas left in the tank, and that costs you money. The little bit of gas left in the tank with Zadara doesn't cost you anything because they're just sitting there in the wings waiting for you to consume. And what security measures do you use? Automatically, we replicate the data across geographic areas through multiple clouds. Remember that big ecosystem that I did there? In fact, this is probably a really good time. I did get a question through this set of slides, and it says, Doug, you talked about 300 sites worldwide. How would that help me in my data center? And well, the key is here that we basically have the ability to do a DR copy to any one of those 300 sites, depending on where you live and where you are. We can do a cloned backup out there. You partner with some of our backup customers or partners to be able to do backup. So any of these ecosystems, any VPSA in the planet can find another VPSA in the planet, owned by you, of course, as long as you have the right credentials, IP addressing, networking configuration, all those things, and security, all those things can be done. So you could literally spin up a VPSA in the East Coast, connect it to your VMware, and then you could create a VPSA in the West Coast, not even connected to a VM device today. Get the mirror going. You could do a whole thing in 4 minutes, 5 minutes. And then if a disaster occurs on the East Coast, you could then spin up by demand the virtual machines on the West Coast if you wish. So putting together a disaster recovery plan is very, very easy. So thank you so much for that question out there, and I really do appreciate that. A few use cases that we'd like to talk about, and I've already talked about Ancestry a little bit. They're basically ingesting large volumes of digital images, like I said, pictures of your grandmother and military records and marriage records and all those things. I know my wife is going down. She's a big Ancestry.com customer, checking all our family lines and things like that. They needed to have concurrent access from on-prem and from the public cloud. They wanted to be able to do that to be able to accomplish their mission. So the results were 100% compliant with their current applications. That was key. They didn't want to rewrite the application. We supported NFS and CIFS concurrently. So they ingest using Microsoft, and they basically write it to Amazon, and they have to basically do those derivations. They do those through Linux. So they wanted to be able to support CIFS and NFS concurrently. So they didn't have to rewrite their application, which basically gave them back 4 or 5 months. Complete migration from on-prem to all cloud. So they basically moved that over. They use our interface, the data availability for auto backup into S3. So we have a backup to object storage, a backup to S3, which they really enjoy. And there was no new technology required in this environment. They basically gone from, it's a crazy number, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 RUs, rack units in Salt Lake City. And I think they're down to a rack or two from that whole mission. So they've really collapsed this down. During this whole COVID thing, he said, I don't have to go to the data center every day or every week to change drives and things like that. You guys take care of all that for me. So Nolan, a good friend of mine, says, even as we're scaling, we've been able to reduce our expenses, which is something that he's very, very happy with. We also have a service provider in Harrisburg, PA, and they're primarily focused on VDI applications for healthcare. And if you go into one of their hospitals and you may see a nurse with an iPad, and the iPad could have a picture of your X-rays or your chart or whatever, all that's being staged and hosted in an on-prem solution in Harrisburg, PA. And basically through some really cool magic that they've put into this VDI application using other hardware, they've been able to basically get the data out to these hospitals quickly. So they faced a large capital outlay to replace the aging environments. It was Equalogics. And so against the Equalogics, they were able to reduce their overall footprint by about 81%, increase their performance by about 80%. They use this SSD caching for this latency issue. They use a lot of just regular nearline SAS drives, which saves them some money. And now they spin out new storage in minutes instead of weeks with their legacy storage. So Sam, another good friend of mine, says, I recognize immediately that Zadara would be a game changer for our business, and it certainly has been. And so NetTrepid has been a fabulous partner of ours. So I'm going to leave it here for a moment, but I'm going to read a couple of questions that we've got from our customers here. So hang on just a moment, and let me bring up some of these. And so one question, I think, Ray, this is for me, and it says, after you created the VPSA, can we grow the engines, add drives easily? can you take me through that exercise? So if you remember my diagram for the VPSAs, it had the engines, it had cores, it had drives, and so forth. So you literally go back to that same set of UI interfaces or the e-commerce interfaces that I did, and I said, okay, now what you can do is go through that very same interface and say, I want to go from a 400 engine to an 800. Click, click. We automatically increase the standby engine to 8 cores. Or 4 cores, and then we basically do a failover. You don't even know this happened, a failover, and then we add more cores to the other engine. So complete rolling upgrades for engines. We add drives, and the drives basically then will be incorporated into the pool, and we now have the ability to grow that pool and grow the volumes on the fly. So everything is done on the fly. Very, very easy to do this. So with that, I also have a couple of questions, I think, for Ray. So Ray, I'm going to turn this over to you. It says, how is data sovereignty handled with Zadara Storage Cloud offering? So how do we handle data sovereignty?
As you talked about, through our portals, you have the ability, as you've seen, the locations, the regions of where you want your VPSA to reside in. We have facilities in Canada, we have facilities in the UK. If that's where you want your data to be, and it's actually once you create it there, it's tied to there, unless you make use our mirroring feature to do your DR and stuff like that. But that's how we handle it. It's your choice. Where do you want your data to reside? As the map shows, we're pretty global, I think so. We even got a facility. Well, we have a customer that's in Machu Picchu too. That's one, that little single dot that you saw in South America. And we do have an installation there that you can replicate to there, or they can replicate out to wherever they want. But the data is residing in South America there itself. I hope that answers the question.
Very good, great answer. And of course, the other piece of the sovereignty is basically having the single tenant experience, where nobody can be traipsing on your drives, nobody can be in your cores, nobody can be in your cache, nobody can be in your memory, nobody can be anywhere. You've got your own credentials and login. It is one of the most rigorous standards of security that we've ever found. So this customer says, Ray, I've got a vSAN, and how is it that you're different from a vSAN? I listened to the presentation. So,
yeah, great question. The vSAN does what it does great, and it's an awesome technology. However, if most of you notice, it's very tied into your the nodes itself. So you need more capacity, you'll probably need another node. It's very tied to that. In a sense, it's very expensive. It can be very expensive too. We take a different approach where we decouple that. You want more capacity, we'll add more drives. If there's more capacity needed for CPUs, more stronger engines, bigger engines and stuff like that, we can add more storage nodes. It's very decoupled. It makes it very cost effective in that way. So you can grow into petabytes easily without really needing more storage nodes to get there. So that's how we do it. We're very performant in that way too. So it's a great way to actually decouple that whole I need more capacity. Okay, now I got to consume another physical physical storage, or physical, I should say, compute.
And we have that same concept in hyperconverged today. In the world, not us, of course, but hyperconverged says, typically I need to grow more compute to get more storage, and I need to grow more storage to get more compute, and it's kind of like this circle that we chase ourselves, being able to get just the right piece. So absolutely, I love that a lot. So if there are no more questions, I'm not seeing any more. Those were 4 great questions that I basically picked up on. I'm going to go ahead and turn this back over to Drew. And I know Drew.
Before you do that, Doug,
yes, please.
Let me ask you a question. I love your stories. Your stories are awesome. Every time we get together, we talk. You got some great stories. There's one story that I really enjoyed, was the Verizon story. If you could share that.
Yeah, please, I certainly would. So Verizon came to us and they said, we really want to stand up this environment in AWS or in a public cloud. But they basically couldn't go to a public cloud because it was the storage, what their data was going to be in a storage pool. okay, which means that they could be scaled across for performance and really to monetize the public cloud. You can imagine that we basically need to scale this out to thousands of drives, and they basically give you 50 terabytes or 100 terabytes of this 100 or 1,000 drive pool. So you have no idea where your data is. You have no idea if drive number 972 fails. There could be 100 customers, a little bit of their data, but some of their data on drive 972. So Verizon said, we can't do that because if a drive fails, we need you to ship it either to yourself and have it shredded and give us a certificate, or you need to ship it to us and we'll go ahead and shred it. So we need to know that that physical data is no longer out there, because some drives fail because mechanical error, like the motor failed, but not necessarily the data is still good, and who knows where that drive goes, of course. So they needed to make sure they need to have an assuredness of that. So Verizon has, I think, 10 drive VPSAs each. And so we know those 10 drives. I mean, we physically know where they are. We know where they're located. There's nobody else on those drives. So if drive number 7 fails, we basically can take the appropriate action on drive number 7 to make sure that that data is basically moved away from the planet, if you will. Now we also have a scrub feature. So if somebody who doesn't want to buy the drives and get them back when they're done, or they basically decommission the VPSA, we can have a scrub feature, which is a DoD standard, 3 worst case data patterns across the drive. And basically we can be sure of that. But if the drive fails, if it physically isn't spinning anymore, you can't run a scrub on it. So that was the story, I think, that you were remembering, Ray?
Yep, that's it.
All right, perfect. I love that. So the 14-day free trial is on there, and then I'll turn it over to Drew. You can go to zadara.com/free trial. No credit card. You can spin it up. You can play around. You can do whatever you want. We'll help you configure the VPSA from a drives, capacities, containers, and things like that. And then basically free training. Who knows? Maybe you just want to get trained on some of this stuff, so you'll have something intelligent, more intelligent, to bring back to the boardroom or back to some of your conversations about how this kind of technology is being very pervasive inside this kind of a model that we're talking about today. So thank you so much for your attendance, and thank you so much, Drew, for supporting us here. So Drew, it's back over to you.
All right, well, thanks so much, Doug and Ray, for taking the time to speak with us today. As a reminder to our audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. To find out more about the VMUG webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. Please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast, and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.